Hello, my dear friends. This is Blagomir with you. I am glad to welcome you to my Vedic channel. At your request, in the comments, I am recording another extensive Vedic lecture on the topic of Kundalini, energy, Kundalini, what it is, what its mystery is, its true greatness, and how this knowledge can be used in our everyday modern life. Therefore, watch this lecture until the end, as it will contain a lot of practical knowledge, wisdom, and of course, you will understand the great power of Kundalini energy. I will start by saying that Kundalini, translated from Latin, means coiled, or in Sanskrit. If we translate the Sanskrit word, it means coiled in the form of a snake. In Hatha Yoga, in esotericism, the energies concentrated at the base of the spine in the area of the Muladhara chakra are called Kundalini. There are various practices and methods for awakening this energy. That is, it means the rising of Kundalini energy upwards, along the spinal column and through the 7 main chakras. Well, I will explain this in more detail. So, my dear listeners, yoga texts state that each of us has a subtle body, whose main components are the so-called energy centers, chakras, and energy channels, nadis. And most often, 6 main chakras are distinguished, chakras located along our spine, and also a separate area at the top of the head, which is called Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus, if we translate from Sanskrit. This is the 7th chakra. And among the channels, the energy channels in our body, the central energy channel, which runs along the entire spine, holds special importance. It is called Sushumna. This channel connects the lower and upper parts. There are also other energy channels that are also of great importance. These are the left and right channels, Ida and Pingala, the channels of the sun and moon, which are located to the left and right of the central one. And now Kundalini, my dear friends. In layman's terms, it represents energy in a dormant state at the base of each of our spines, coiled like a snake in 3.5 turns, in a spiral. It is located at the base of the central energy channel, Sushumna, together under the name Muladhara chakra, that is, in the area of the coccyx. And it is described in the Yoga Sutras as a fine thread, similar to a flash of lightning. Upon awakening, this energy begins to rise through the Brahmanadi, the subtle passage within the central channel. And then this energy continues to rise through the 6 main chakras, gradually untying the knot of Brahma, the knot of Vishnu, knot of Rudra, Shiva, yes, at the level of the 3rd eye and between it, and exits through the Brahmarandra, the opening of Brahma, which essentially further leads to this energy being localized in the area of our fontanelle at the crown of the head. Thus, by realizing this energy, a person attains the state of moksha, that is, liberation from the cycle of births and deaths. Kundalini is also considered a mysterious, mystical, enigmatic force, just like chakras, which are mysterious energy centers. Although many people with modern scientific knowledge still agree that the ancient description, chakras, are very closely related to the locations of the main nerve centers in the human body. Now, let's shed the next light. The maternal energy or maternal nature of Kundalini. What does this mean? In general, honestly, I have a great desire. In connection with the great festival at Voratore, dedicated to the mother goddess Durga, to record a separate lecture for you on the topic of Shakti power, feminine energy, and of course Shaktism as a system of knowledge about feminine energy. Therefore, if you, my dear viewers and listeners, are interested in the topic of Shakti energy, feminine energy, how it manifests in our world, how to manage it and use it in your daily life, write comments. Yes, Vladimir Yuryevich, we want a lecture about Shakti. Well, while you are writing your comments, I will return to the fact that Kundalini is also maternal energy, and it essentially represents a reflection of Shakti. Therefore, many masters call it Kundalini Shakti, the primordial energy of God within a person, and it is described that God Shiva can only create when united with his energy Shakti, which is inseparable from him, like moonlight from the moon. Descriptions of Shakti and Kundalini can also be found in the Saundarya Lahari. This is one of the most widely used religious texts in Hinduism. Also, in the Devi Bhagavata Purana, the most important text of Shaktism, when praising Shakti as the mother of the universe, it is said, "You are Kundalini," in the Muladhara. Additionally, the Sri Lalita Sahasranama, a sacred Hindu text, contains 1,000 names of the Supreme Goddess Mother, one of which is Kundalini. And this is not by chance. In the 13th century, Saint Naneshwar wrote at the age of 15 the so-called text Bhavartha Deepika, which is a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, where in chapter 6 he described in detail the awakening of the Kundalini energy and said, "Truly, the goddess Kundalini is like the real mother of the universe." Thus, the Kundalini energy as the energy, Shakti of Shiva when awakened, reaches the Sahasrara chakra and unites with Shiva himself. One might say, yes, that there are supposedly myths written by the Hindus. But if we look through the lens of modern scientific knowledge, specifically physics, specifically electromechanics, and bioenergetics, we will understand that these are indeed very serious matters that point to the awakening of the energy potential that is truly hidden within each of us. And all of this is diagnosed with instruments, measured, and, among other things, confirmed by a vast number of experiments conducted on Indian yogis. Now, it's a very popular topic. And in the modern world, how do people relate to the concept of Kundalini? And here are some sources. Modern, literary, associate Kundalini with sexual desire, whereas others claim that the sexual function is directly related to the Muladhara, the first chakra, which is located slightly lower than the Kundalini energy, and which cease all their activity while the Kundalini awakens. There are also discrepancies in understanding the signs of Kundalini awakening, and I will explain this in detail in our lecture. Why? Because I want to share with you the real experiences of people practicing yoga who have encountered Kundalini awakening practices. So, keep watching and listening. Next, my dear friends, some authors also associate the awakening of Kundalini with a combination of symptoms such as spontaneous body movements, body twisting, excessive heat, sudden pain sensations, bouts of bliss, inner vision of light, and some others. There is also a case described that happened with Gopi Krishna. He was such a pandit. Gopi Krishna, who lived in the 20th century, if I remember correctly, he left this world in 1984. So Pandit Gopi Krishna claimed to have experienced the awakening of Kundalini and spoke about it as about painful physical and mental sufferings. He wrote, "My face turned deathly pale and my body became extremely weak. My anxiety reached such a level that I couldn't sit still in one place for even half an hour. When I did force myself to do so, my attention shifted to the chaos happening in my head. An impending sense of danger intensified, and I felt like my heart was about to leap out of my chest. Quite something, right? No sane, normal person would want to experience this voluntarily. Then he described an unbearable heat accompanied by terrible pain, so that I tossed and turned as if in a fever. He further wrote that his whole body was shaking with pain. Every organ was begging for mercy. All senses were exposed to the extreme, and the heat was literally scorching my insides. I understood that I was dying, as my heart was unable to withstand the excessive strain. My throat was dry, my whole body was burning, and I was unable to alleviate my own suffering. Such is the vivid experience. Gopi Pandit, on the awakening of Kundalini energy in his body. It is known that the practice of awakening Kundalini holds great danger. And now the world is teeming with various pseudo-teachers, gurus, who in one way or another are calling out from every iron and loudspeaker. The flock to the awakening of Kundalini energy. They say, take our course, and we will awaken your Kundalini, and you will become beautiful, young, and invincible. But more often than not, this is just a beautiful fiction. So, why does Kundalini hold danger? Well, as we have found out from Gopi Pandit's commentary. From his personal experience, it is a very, very dangerous energy. And if we look at historical statistics, many cases of deaths, suicides, madness, and injuries have been recorded, caused by the awakening of Kundalini. Symptoms of awakening. This serpent power is, first of all, burning with an inner fire. Many report seeing demons, sharp mood swings from euphoria to extreme depression, even to suicidal impulses. Moreover, these transitions can occur in very short periods of time. There are bursts of wild sexual activity, fluctuations from physical bliss to terrible, unbearable pains throughout the body, frequent cases of madness and open possession. And in India, they approach this practice with caution. However, here in Russia, in the CIS region, as I mentioned, for just about 5,000 rubles, they will easily open your chakras and start awakening the Kundalini energy. Those who are more enterprising will do it not for 5,000 rubles, but for $5,000, and so on. Therefore, on one hand, practicing yoga is beneficial, but on the other hand, it also needs to be safe. Therefore, you need to very clearly trust and verify those. You are going to, and accordingly, understand what kind of knowledge system is being conveyed there. And so, according to the teachings of the Holy Fathers, I present to you an example. At the moment, the fall into sin, the devil, having gained certain power over man, implanted in him two serpentine principles, the heart serpent and the lumbar serpent. Saint Macarius the Great says, as soon as Adam transgressed the commandment, the serpent, having entered, became the master of the house, and it is with the soul, like another soul, having entered the soul, it became its member, it even adhered to the physical man. And in the heart flows a multitude of impure thoughts. The serpent of the heart is the radical evil in man, so say the Holy Fathers. The demonic pole, the center of lust for power, sexuality, from which evil impulses run through the entirety of human nature, even to the parts of his spirit. And it is also said that the serpent is the core of the small, selfish human ego. I, this predator, invisible in human consciousness. In the Vedas, this is called ahamkara. the ego. It is also said that the heart serpent sends a stream of evil thoughts and images to the mind from the first person. That is, I decided, mine, I want, I think so, and so on. By urging to commit sin, it provokes self-love, self-admiration, and indulgence in one's own feelings. Thus, a person perceiving the serpent's thoughts as their own fulfills its will. Jesus Christ says, "For evil thoughts come from the heart. Murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false testimony, blasphemy. This defiles a person." And he further calls all of us to cleanse our hearts from passions and says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Similarly, Macarius the Great calls us with these words, "Enter into your mind, captive and slave of sin, and examine what lies at its bottom, in the depths of your thoughts." This, I mean, the serpent nesting in the so-called secret places of your soul and killing you in the principal members of your soul. Your soul. The second serpent, the lumbar one, is well known as Kundalini. And Gregory of Sinai writes about the power of Kundalini as follows. The internal and natural enemy of the lumbar distorts all spiritual matters through fantasy, presenting one thing instead of another, and instead of warmth, causes abnormal burning, so that the soul becomes numb and burdened in this delusion. Instead of bliss, it causes irrational charm, pride, and vanity. But time, experience, and feelings reveal its cunning and deceit. And this power is associated with the fallen human eros in orthodox asceticism, if one may put it that way. Experience and feelings reveal the deceit of this serpent. And here is what we see, that the energy of Kundalini is known in all cultural, practically all traditions and religions. And if we look closely at religious symbolism, in the Catholic Church, Orthodox, the Mayan Indians, and so on, practically all peoples of the world have the depiction of a serpent or serpents, sometimes several serpents, that coil around a scepter or a chalice, and also the depiction of a certain pine cone, which is associated with the image of the pineal gland. And as the saints rightly assert, Kundalini always creates a certain substitution. She replaces deep spiritual peace with short-lived, satisfied vanity, healing warmth with burning heat, spiritual light with distorted light, distorted, more accurately, light with the activity of imagination. And so, based on this, the esoteric science of Kundalini is seen as a deadly spiritual trap. In the esoteric Orthodox tradition, it is passed down from generation to generation. Therefore, the path of yoga is, to some extent, a path that the Church Fathers demonize. They protect their flock from people developing along this path. But we also see that yogic knowledge is gaining great popularity in the world. And if they are practiced and passed down through parampara from teachers across millennia, if these practices occur under the guidance of a truly experienced and genuine master, then it is a path of maximum activity and union with the energy of Kundalini. Whereas others, let's say, simply knowledgeable in practices and knowledge without the appropriate initiations, dedications can just to devote one's life to this force in a completely unpredictable way. Therefore, to work with Kundalini, one needs knowledge, experience, and a very wise, proven teacher or mentor who has been serving or following a certain yogic tradition for many years, if not lifetimes. Therefore, pay very, very close attention to this. Next, my friends, now, I want to discuss, as promised, the phenomena that accompany the process of Kundalini awakening. And if last time we discussed Gopi Krishna Pandit, now I want to describe the state. Jiddu Krishnamurti, as mentioned in his biography written by Jayakaram in 1986, and here's what is said. It is said about the pains in the back of the neck. Over 2 days, they increased to such an extent that Krishnamurti could not think, could not do anything. He had to lie down in bed. He almost lost consciousness, although he was aware of what was happening around him. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "Indeed, I couldn't do anything, eat. And around 6 o'clock, I began to lose the physical body. The next day for him, the vibrations created by people in the room were unbearable. He felt much worse, was weak and tired, and cried from exhaustion and lack of control over his body. It seemed to him that thousands of needles were piercing his head, and he imagined that his bed was disgustingly dirty, and he asked to be let go to the forests of his native India. For the next 10 days, everything was calm, and then the spines began to appear. Different sensations, and a period of acute physical pain began. They started daily at 6 p.m. and usually continued 2-3 hours. Immediately after meditation, he would lie down on the couch and, almost in a semi-conscious state, begin to moan and complain that he was very hot. He would shudder, lose consciousness, and when he fully came to, he did not remember what had happened to him, although he felt it. An unclear, general discomfort and malaise. His sensitivity sharply increased. He couldn't tolerate light, sounds, or touch. Sometimes, when it seemed he was fully conscious, he would suddenly stumble and fall. Sometimes he would sit up in bed and start muttering something, then crash forward or backward. Sometimes he moaned, tossed and turned, muttering something incoherent and complaining of back pain. Then his pain intensified and his whole body seemed like an open wound. He moved to a new room and the pain shifted to another part of his body. Further, he would cry out, sob from the pain, and beg for at least a second to catch his breath. One night, the pain was much stronger than usual. Krishnamurti began running at great speed around the room until he was restrained, fearing he might hurt himself. He attempted to run away from the pain several times. His body twisted, taking on dangerously awkward positions. Once, sobbing and in tears, he placed his head on the floor in front of his knees and somersaulted, nearly breaking his neck. One time he felt that someone was sneaking around the house, approached the low walls surrounding the yard, and loudly told those people to leave. Then he lay down and began to exclaim, "Please come back, Krishnamurti." For a few days the pain moved further into his face and eyes, and it seemed to him that he had no eyes. He sobbed and moaned. And then one night friends heard him fall out of bed, and then he began to apologize and say that he knew he shouldn't have fallen, he shouldn't have moved. After that, he clenched his fist tightly and placed his hands under his back, but the pain did not subside. It was so terrible that he found it difficult to breathe. He was gasping for air and lost consciousness 3 times. The pains continued to torment him all the time, moving around his body. For several days, it seemed to him that his skull had been opened, and he fainted again. These, my friends, are the lines described in the biography of Jiddu Krishnamurti. And this, well, if we look at it with the naked eye, very much resembles practically pure exorcism or the enslavement of a person's body by some powerful demonic force. There's no other way to describe it. Enormous. Painful sensations, groans, suffering, torments, and so on and so forth. But this is how the process of Kundalini awakening is described. Also, there were other people, for example, Muktananda. He wrote, "Then I began to feel something like warmth growing in my body. It became so hot that it started to burn me everywhere, regardless of the methods. I tried to cool my body, but it continued to burn as if it were on fire. I became very thin. Saliva was flowing from my mouth. I drank rice water instead of solid food. My body became so hot from this burning shaft that I felt no relief, even if I sat in a pool of cold water. I began to feel a burning pain between my eyebrows, and it was so intense that I couldn't sleep at night. When I entered, I looked outside and saw that the sugarcane fields were on fire. The fire spread quickly. My fear intensified with every second. I heard people screaming terribly, as if it were the end of the world. I looked through the small window of my hut and saw strange creatures, ranging from 6 to 50 feet tall. Not demons, not demigods, but in human form. They danced naked with mouths wide open. Their shrieks and cries were terrible, foretelling the end of the world. I was fully conscious, yet observing my madness. It seemed real to me. Then I remembered death. I sat in my lotus asana, the lotus position. All around me, I saw fire spreading. The entire universe was on fire. A blazing ocean unfolded and engulfed the whole earth. An army of spirits and demons surrounded me. Here are the mystical experiences of another practice. This, of course, strongly prompts thoughts, firstly, about what true Kundalini awakening is and what consequences it might have. Therefore, I am completely on almost 100% in agreement with the opinions. Indeed, masters, experts, scientists who claim that this is not something to be taken lightly, and many people have lost their minds from these uncontrolled practices and Kundalini awakening. Many people have parted with life, and unfortunately, this is indeed the real truth. My friends, now we are moving forward together. It is said that Hatha yogis can awaken the Kundalini energy through pranayama, breathing exercises, asanas, bodywork exercises, and mudras. These are special hand positions. Raja yogis through concentration and training of their mind. Bhaktas through devotion to God and perfect self-renunciation. Jnana yogis through analytical will. Tantrists through mantras. The awakening of Kundalini and its union with Shiva in the Sahasrara chakra induces a state of samadhi or moksha in yogis, complete liberation from the bonds of the material world and from samsara. It is believed that all karma accumulated over millions, billions, perhaps trillions of incarnations is instantly burned and purified if a yogi reaches the state of Kundalini awakening and enters samadhi. Therefore, for many, this is the cherished goal to completely free themselves from karma and thus attain true liberation and not reincarnate again. It is also said by Sivananda Saraswati that samadhi cannot be achieved without the awakening of Kundalini energy. Now, I hope, my dear viewers, you understand why enlightened gurus strive to protect their students from uncontrolled use of practices related to the awakening of Kundalini, and especially if they are conducted without a mentor and teacher. Further, I would also like to draw your attention to another question related to Kundalini. The fact is that, in general, the concept of Kundalini has its roots in ancient Vedic, primarily tantric traditions, and references to them are dated, so that you understand somewhere thousands of years before our era. That's the minimum. And over the centuries, this profound idea of awakening Kundalini has made its way through various practices, from the esoteric rituals of Tantra to the more widely accessible forms of modern yoga. But now the question. Why is this energy represented as a snake? The fact is, the snake, with its ability to shed its skin and renew itself. For a long time, it has been and still is a symbol of spiritual transformation and rebirth in many cultures around the world. Similarly, the awakening of Kundalini represents such a profound transformation of consciousness, freeing us from our limited self-perception and dissolution. In a broader context of reality. And now the question. Have you ever felt a mysterious force within yourself? Some unexplored divine potential that is ready to be unleashed? Perhaps you have heard whispers of an ancient spiritual power. Perhaps you have intuitively felt that there is within you some unknown force that simply rests, but there is a temptation to awaken it. Well, all of this points to contact with Kundalini Shakti. Now, let's touch on the topic of the 7 chakras. Why? Because to understand the principle of Kundalini energy, you need to know how the chakras work. Imagine that your spine acts as a conductor of energy. On it are located 7 rotating vortices of power, such electromagnetic eddies, which are situated along the entire spine from the crown to the base. These are the chakras, the energy centers that correspond to various aspects of our physical, emotional, and spiritual being. And so, the journey of Kundalini is nothing less than a cosmic dance. When this energy awakens, it begins its ascent and transition, crawling from one chakra. And so, as it rises up the spine, passing through the chakras, it activates and harmonizes these energy centers, eliminating, or more precisely, burning away all blockages and releasing the hidden potential of the chakras. Therefore, imagine that if you want a symphony where each chakra acts as an instrument, then the awakening of Kundalini is like a great conductor who brings each instrument into perfect harmony and creates the overall music of enlightenment. If one can metaphorically perhaps express it this way. Ancient Vedic philosophy conceptualized the journey of consciousness, linking the rise of Kundalini with 3 main circles. The first circle is the circle of earth. At its foundation, we find our original nature, our connection to the physical world. Here, Kundalini lies dormant, coiled, near the Muladhara, and our potential awaits its liberation. The next circle is the human circle. This is our everyday consciousness, our sense of self. It is located in the middle of the chest. We point to our chest with our hand and say, I. This is the heart center, the human circle. This is the Anahata chakra. Here we experience love, compassion, connection with God. There is also a divine third circle or transcendental circle. This is the Sahasrara chakra. This is the realm of higher consciousness. Here we experience dissolution, union in the divine. We connect with God there and transcend our limited conceptual ego. And so, the journey of Kundalini is a kind of movement through these circles from earthly, conditioned consciousness to the divine, limitless. That is, it is a path of transformation that leads us from our basic animal nature, from the reptilian brain, to the highest spiritual potential or to super consciousness. And so, my dear friends, in the Yoga Kundali Upanishad, Kundalini is described as being like a thread in a lotus shining at the root of the Mulakanda lotus. This vivid image depicts Kundalini as a luminous force that is once again coiled, at the base of the spine and ready to unfold its potential. Also, there is another concept of prana, and so we must, in order to fully shed light on the mystery of the greatness of Kundalini, understand the concept of prana. Prana is the life force that animates all living beings. And in the Vedic tradition, the influx of cosmic energy, prana, is crucial for human growth and development. And this prana primarily directs the physical growth of our body, our maturation in childhood and youth. That is, it is the force that allows a tiny seed to grow into a tall tree or a helpless little infant to develop into a capable adult. However, the role of prana changes when a person reaches maturity. The intense energy that was necessary for our physical development no longer holds the same significance. And instead, this powerful force settles at the base of the spine, where it becomes the dormant energy of Kundalini. And this stored prana is now in the form of Kundalini. It represents a vast resource for our transformation and spiritual growth. That is, as if nature, having completed its work on physical development, left us a reserve of energy for our inner evolution, spirit. It all makes perfect sense. But if we are in an animal consciousness, living life like ordinary primitive beings who say, I am this meat, I am this body, who completely wastes their life, serving their senses without thinking about the divine potential within themselves, about the gifts, the treasures of the spirit that undoubtedly exist in everyone, then this reservoir, this treasure, remains useless. It's like there is a Vedic parable where, for many years, decades, a beggar sat under a tree and begged for alms every day. People passed by, sometimes they gave, sometimes they didn't, sometimes he starved, sometimes he ate, but in the end, many, many years passed, 45 years, and he died under that tree. He was an orphan, he had no one, and when the question arose among the people who passed by about where to bury him and who would bury him, they didn't think long and decided to avoid carrying the body and spending extra money to bury him right under the tree where he had sat all his life. And when they started digging a hole under this tree to bury this body, this man's corpse, they unearthed a chest. Upon opening this chest, they found inside a huge amount of gold, coins and jewels. In other words, it was completely filled to the brim with treasures. This is the irony, the drama, of the modern person, that each of us has an unseen divine treasure hidden within. Yet, we walk around like beggars with outstretched hands, ignoring this treasure and immersing ourselves in the world, in external forms, hoping to find our elusive, unattainable happiness there. We spend our lives on this, the first half of life trying to gain something, and the second half trying to heal the illnesses that have arisen from the overexertion of the first half of life. And so life ends and passes by. And a person does not even come a jot closer to those true blessings and gifts that are instilled in them by the Lord God. Let's move on. Now the next question arises. Dear friends of mine, there is a concept of bhakti yoga, the path of devotion to God, the path of the heart. And it is said that one of the simplest and fastest ways to awaken the Kundalini energy in the age of Kali Yuga in which we live is the path of bhakti yoga. This means that for someone who is in a state of passionate devotion to God, to the divine. Sometimes spontaneous opportunities for the awakening of Kundalini energy open up through supreme divine grace. This can happen during kirtan, ecstatic chanting. It can happen during certain rituals, actions performed with such high motivation, in the consciousness that everything a person does is dedicated to God. And then their energies are purified, and at one moment Kundalini may awaken. There are also other tantric practices, but there is also the experience of Shaktipat. Shaktipat is the energy transmitted by the grace of the Guru. And some traditions claim that Shaktipat is indeed the spiritual transmission of energy, Kundalini, from the Guru to the disciple. And more precisely, it is not the transmission of Kundalini, but the transmission of the initiatory Guru's energy, which can awaken Kundalini in the disciple. And often, many researchers, disciples, and practitioners describe such an experience as the lightning of divine grace. And so, there was once such an interesting case. During a conversation with a spiritual seeker who was sitting in meditation with Shiva Balayogi, when he visited the USA in the 1990s, he said he sat and waited for Shiva Balayogi to enter the room. And at the moment he entered the room, he looked at this person. He slowly entered. Immediately, or rather, he entered the state of Nivikalpa Samadhi for several hours. But just before he did, he said he saw a huge white light. And so, imagine a seeker sitting in front of their spiritual teacher. With a touch to the forehead or even just a simple glance, the Guru transmits akuma, spark energy, which can or is capable of igniting the dormant Kundalini of the disciple. And in that single moment, the seeker may feel a surge of energy rising up their spine, accompanied by visions of light, deep mystical experiences. But such experiences are not necessarily limited to those in the physical presence of the Guru. The Vedas also mention the case of Shaktipat, transmission over a distance, which is not just a few kilometers but several hundred miles. There are also historical instances of spontaneous experiences or awakening of Kundalini. And this too most often occurs among holy people, saints who spend all their time in practices, in prayer, in repentance. And this is not their goal, meaning they do not wish or did not wish for the awakening of Kundalini, nor did they perform special practices. It simply manifested by divine grace itself. It manifested. This literally also happens. The next point, dear friends and esteemed colleagues, that we must realize. What is said about Kundalini energy in modern traditions, including psychological ones. Now, if we look into the history of the 20th century and recall the father of analytical psychology, Carl Gustav Jung, then we will understand that Jung conducted a lot of research precisely in the field of Kundalini Shakti and the awakening of the unconscious, and further, its manifestation from the depths of the psyche releases and continues to release vast amounts of energy. And what was recently blocked finds an outlet, and a person can manage it, can interact with it. And so, most likely, it is precisely the enormously charged energy released from the subconscious that clears a space for itself and transforms the consciousness of a person, thus initiating the process of individuation according to Jung, triggered by a powerful current of a Kundalini energy, which is accessible in general, the 1 of the most powerful energies available to humans. And you remember that Jung, he developed his concept, and a significant role was dedicated to the individuation of consciousness, or the awakening of superpotential. Therefore, Jung, it's no secret that he studied the Vedas and Vedic texts, and was specifically engaged in the study of Kundalini Shakti. Also, my friends, it's important to note that as many people, as many opinions, and the majority of practitioners and researchers tend to agree that it is one of the most fundamental energies, potentially can turn a person into a superhuman. And before talking about any mystical perfections, abilities, including influencing matter, influencing consciousness, not just of people, but entire civilizations, a person's Kundalini energy must be awakened. This truly opens up possibilities to perform miracles and do many other things on the subtle plane of existence. Not only on the physical material course level, but also on the subtle plane. And this topic was also explored by Lena Blavatsky in her Secret Doctrine. She also dedicated a huge amount of her attention to this topic. And she said that Kundalini is not just energy, it is a trinity. There is a concept known as Prana Kundalini. It is the first cosmic dance in Shiva Shakti. And here it is said that you should initially forget about raising this energy. The pair of Kundalini is not what is inside you, but that within which we and the entire universe exist. It is not a personal power, but the primordial vibration, the heart of Shiva, pulsating in the rhythm of creation, maintenance, and destruction of worlds. Imagine an ocean, its waves on the surface. This is the manifested world, and the bottomless depth is the pair of Kundalini. Can the ocean be raised? One might ask. No, but one can become the ocean by dissolving one's own. What? Individuality. Therefore, the pair of Kundalini is Visarga. That is 2 points, like a division sign. 1 point and above another. This is a symbol of unity, Shiva and Shakti, male and female, consciousness, energy, stillness, and movement. This is not the goal of yoga, but the source of yoga. And the realization of the pair of Kundalini is not an achievement, but a dissolution into the primordial unity. Here I give you a worldview key, unlocking the mystery of energy and the concept of Kundalini. Each lecture on this channel is initiatory, because in it, according to the design of the Higher Father, codes are transmitted for awakening and transformation of the all consciousness of people living in the age of Kali. Next, the second circle or second level is Chit Kundalini, the spark of the divine in the heart. This is no longer an ocean, but a drop that contains the entire ocean within it. Chit Kundalini is the energy of pure consciousness, Chit, dormant in each of us. Its awakening is not a fireworks display of superpowers, but the dawn of deep awareness. Imagine that you have been asleep your entire life, and then suddenly you wake up. Not just opened your eyes, but became aware of yourself, the world, and your place in this world. This is Chit Kundalini, not a flash, but the radiance of inner light. And the path to Chit Kundalini lies through centering. Not on the chakras, not on the breath, but on the interval between inhalation and exhalation. That is, focusing attention on the void. And this gap, this pause between inhalation and exhalation, between one thought and the next thought, action, and the next action, these are the gates to Turia. Turia is the fourth state of consciousness, described in the great sutras, yoga, and also in the Yoga Vasistha. Vasistha speaks to Rama. Rama has certain states of consciousness. Now I will describe them. The fourth is known as Turia, a state where there is neither wakefulness, nor sleep, nor dreaming, but only pure presence. Therefore, the awakening of Chit Kundalini is not about special effects, but a deep internal transformation that goes through many successive stages. There are no techniques here for raising the energy that can be mastered by following the instructions of some young guru for 5,000 rubles. It is a path that requires divine grace and the grace of the guru, absolute devotion, and continuous practice of mindfulness. The next stage is Prana Kundalini, the life-giving flow. It is the most earthly of the three energies. It is the life force. Yes, I have already mentioned it. Above, it is the prana flowing through the nadi channels and enlivening our body. Its awakening is what is usually meant when talking about the raising of Kundalini. But there are many pitfalls here. Why? Because Prana Kundalini is not a snake, but rather a flow of life force that can manifest in very different ways. Like warmth, like vibration, like tingling, like spontaneous movements, kriyas, pain, and so on. And all these sensations are merely symptoms, not the goal itself. Why am I talking about this? Because, again, there are cases where workshops on awakening Kundalini say, look, you feel heat, warmth, that's it, it's happening, it's awakening, we've awakened it, that's the goal. No, that's all nonsense. Kindergarten stuff. That is never the goal. These are just symptoms, some of them. As you know, while the forest is being cut, chips fly. It's roughly the same. What are the dangers on the path of Prana Kundalini? Well, first, forcing the energy. Come on, more. There it goes, come on. A direct path to imbalance and mental problems. And problems, which can be irreversible. That is schizophrenia, manic psychosis, meaning when such powerful energy is directed at an unprepared nervous system, a clogged, obstructed energy channel, meaning the consciousness is not ready, the body is not ready, the circuitry, what? It just burns out. The mind goes off, the can rattles, and then it's easy, fine, check there. Just turns into a madman. That's only half the trouble. It might even turn into a vegetable. The next problem is the chase for special effects. That is, it distracts from the main thing, from awareness. That is, people are running. To some, right now, let's go. Now the special effects will start. Here it awakens. Let's go. We are waiting for miracles, visions of light, and so on. The third danger is the use of awakened prana, energy, for achieving worldly goals. This is also a dead-end path that binds a person even more to samsara, leading them away from spirituality. Therefore, Kundalini Prana is a tool, and its awakening should serve not the satisfaction of the ego, but the liberation from the ego, the purification of the body, mind, and the preparation for meeting Chit Kundalini, the true light of consciousness. This is the path to wholeness, as prescribed by the Vedas, yogis. And the great Adi Yogi Lord Shiva, it has been ordained. Therefore, friends, my dear viewers and subscribers, Kundalini is not a magic wand, but a mirror reflecting our inner state and misunderstanding of its nature. The pursuit of special effects, forcing the process. All this can create big problems for us, so the true awakening of Kundalini is not an explosion, but the dawn of inner strength and potential, leading to clarity, liberation from the shackles of ego, fears, attachments, and of course, the experience of an inseparable connection with the entire world and the divine principle. With this, my dear friends, I sincerely conclude this lecture. Thank you for your attention. You can find even more benefits on our Telegram channel, wisdom.ved. There, every day, we publish the message of the day, Vedic forecasts, quotes from sacred scriptures, and much, much more. We also have very useful self-development courses, retreats, tours, and much more for you. I sincerely wish you, your loved ones, your families and relatives good health, happiness, well-being. May the Almighty always protect you in all your paths, and always the goddess of luck and prosperity, Lakshmi, Devi, the great mother goddess, protects you and makes your life abundant and blessed. I was with you, Blagomir, and see you soon.